next question, I suppose it ties in a wee bit to what you've been talking about already in terms of the issue of cognition, because I suppose it's to do with learning, and that's sort of my background, to do with learning theories. And what part do you feel learning should play in interpretation?
What part
should
learning play? Well, I thought it was pretty central, really. It's one of those kind of very simple, obvious questions, which is far from it, in a way. I suppose I'm doing a lot of work at the moment on climate change.
Right.
Okay, nothing to do with interpretation whatsoever. And what comes out time and time again from all the surveys is that people are remarkably ignorant about the causes and consequences of climate change.
Yeah.
That's not to criticise them, that's not to be rude about them, it's the way it is. I think people's perspective on their understanding of climate change in terms of what it means for not only the environment but people all around the world is very rudimentary at all. You know, to give you a good example of that, a good example, but talk about energy at the moment. A lot of pressure on people to reduce their energy, to reduce their consumption. But you'll say that to people, you know, you should be consuming less and so on and so forth. And people say, yeah, but what about you know, China and India? You know, they're building a power station a week, but a lot of those goods are actually for us.
Right.
You know, you go into IKEA or B&Q or whatever department store is, you look where those products have come from. So they're consuming a lot of resources, generating a lot of carbon, but it's for us. The point is, global warming, climate change is a global issue, and we are implicated, you know, in terms of all this stuff that's going on. So you can't say, well, they're doing it. So I suppose what I'm saying is that trying to get people to understand the bigger picture, for me, that's one of the things about what learning is. It's I hate the expression, but thinking out of the box might be another way. It's not really saying another way, but just trying to take a much broader perspective on issues. How important is learning to interpretation? I would give another sort of a take on that as well. I'd like to kind of turn it around, in as much that I think that a lot of interpreters think that they provide learning materials, it's a better way of putting it, for the visitor. So you do an exhibition and the visitor learns from that exhibition. So your role as an interpreter is to provide that material from which the visitor learns.
Right. But
there is another view, and we've done some quite interesting research on this, that interpretive material acts, if you like, as a stimulus for people to talk about the subject matter under discussion, as it were. So, for example, we did some work at the Jorvik Viking Centre and the Science Museum, one looking at the historical concept, one looking at the scientific concept. And we compared what do people learn from an exhibition, which is like a bit of flat work, like that, exhibits where you pull handles or turn knobs and stuff like that, and exhibits which encourage social interaction. So, for example, you get a parent and a child going up to a bit of flat work, and they would start talking about it, and what we found was the parent was learning from the child.
Okay.
So this kind of model that we have this learning material, and it's usually adult-centred, goes down, the adult would then interpret it for the child.
Right.
What is actually going on is that, I mean, if we talk about it in learning terms, in a Piagetian sense, for example, Piaget talked about assimilation and accommodation, which is an intrapersonal process. As we're presented with new information about whatever it is, wildlife in Scotland, that new information confronts our existing information, and we can either completely reject it, we can completely accept it and throw away all our old knowledge, or we come to an accommodation between the two. The work that we did said, yes, okay, that happens at a cognitive level, but also it happens at a social level. So that when we see this, and I talk to you, there is what's called socio-cognitive conflict. So it's not just cognitive conflict, it's socio-cognitive conflict. And, that's when learning occurs. So that is another model of learning, I think is really interesting in an interpretive setting, because we know that 90% plus of people that go to interpretive facilities go as members of family or friendship groups. It's a social experience, it's a social occasion. So designing learning as a social experience, offers quite interesting challenges, I think, in many ways, and it's quite exciting.
Yeah.
So I think, to come back to your question, cleverly again, I would say learning is important, because if going to interpretive facilities is a social experience, anything that you can do to encourage that social experience, and it can be through learning, then there's going to be benefits. People are going to enjoy the experience, they're going to want to come back, they want to tell their friends, and all those other things that we put at the end of consultancy reports.
Right, okay. That's good.